Hi, it's Kevin Bates here, and this is video 2 on Bitcoin mining. So in the previous video, I was talking in practical terms about the terminology that's used in Bitcoin mining. If you're a miner and you're not really bothered about the whole way that Bitcoin actually functions. And today I thought I would talk a bit about what would it take for you to actually run an entire mining operation without relying on a mining pool. And the issue there is that you don't just need to have a miner performing all the cryptographic hashes to try to find a new block. You're also going to need to manufacture your own candidate blocks, because those are the things that mining pools provide you with when you're running your little miner connected to the pool. And to create a candidate block, you're going to need to be connected to the Bitcoin network to know which transactions have not yet been processed. Those transactions are stored in something called the mempool. So to run a Bitcoin node, you're going to need to have a computer with the Bitcoin core software running on it, and you're going to need your node to synchronize with the existing Bitcoin network, and that takes quite a lot of time, and your node will need to be up and running all the time and connected to the internet so that it knows from second to second what the current state of the Bitcoin network is. Has a new block arrived? Which transactions did that block package up and process? Therefore, which transactions need to be removed from your node's mempool? So that's the first requirement that you would have if you wanted to mine completely independently of any kind of mining pool. The second thing you're going to need is a bit of software that reads the state of the node and constructs those candidate blocks for your miner to try to hash through and find the nonce that's needed to make the block a valid block that will be accepted by the rest of the network. Now, for most people who are undertaking mining as a hobby, and remember, it's a hobby, it's not likely to be something that's going to be profitable. Maybe you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart to add to the strength of the Bitcoin network. Maybe you're doing it because you find tinkering around with electrical equipment entertaining. I don't know, you maybe have some other motivation that I'm unaware of. But anyway, the fact is that setting up a Bitcoin node is an intensive process and isn't for everyone. So it's just easier if you have a miner to connect to a mining pool and not worry about running your own node, creating your own candidate blocks. And in the previous video, I talked about how mining pools send out the candidate blocks to your miner so that it can then do the computationally intensive work of trying lots of different values to find one that allows that block to become an actual valid block that can then be sent out by the mining pool to the whole of the rest of the Bitcoin network to be added to the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, when you're mining in a pool, you're contributing your hashing power to that of all the other people who are also mining in the pool, and then there needs to be a fair mechanism for determining what proportion of any block rewards that are obtained are passed on to the various miners who participated. And the most common is for you to get a reward in proportion to the hashing power that you've contributed. So if we take a hypothetical situation that there are 10 people mining, each of them has 1 petahash per second of mining power, except for one of them who has, say, 10 petahashes of hashing power. Well, then really what you need is for the person who's contributing 10 times as much to get a bigger proportion. So in fact, the numbers I picked are not great to work out in my head. Basically, if you find a block, then 9/19 of the reward should go to the 9 individuals who have 1 unit of hashing power, and 10/19 should go to the one who has 10 times as much as the others. So I could have picked my numbers a bit better, I suppose. But anyway, you need some way of determining how much hashing power each of the miners has. And in a nice, fair, honest world, you could just rely on everybody reporting, hey, my miner is this powerful, my miner is that powerful. The problem is, of course, that we don't live in such a perfect world, and people would lie and say, yeah, oh yeah, I've got loads and loads of mining power, so they get a bigger share of the rewards that are obtained by finding blocks. So this is overcome by the stratum protocol that I mentioned earlier, which is that it sends out candidate blocks to all the miners and gives them ranges of numbers to search across to see if they can find the lucky number that makes the block valid. And if somebody finds a block, well, that's very easy to verify. You send back saying this number makes this candidate block a valid block. The mining pool can pretty much instantaneously check that, because they only have to perform 2 SHA-256 hashes. That can be done in microseconds. In fact, they'll probably have an ASIC, a dedicated processor, or ASIC stands for Application Specific Integrated Circuit. Anyway, it's a program that is actually coded up in silicon and is therefore very fast and very efficient. And they can then check it and submit the block to the network for inclusion. So knowing that somebody has found a block and submitted it back to the pool is very easy to verify. What's harder to verify is whether they're lying about their hash rate or not. And there is, however, a simple mechanism that you can conduct to prove that you have a certain amount of hashing power, which is that you may find that a particular number in your range, although not making a valid block, is very close to making a valid block. And miners with more hash rate are going to find such values closer to the target value than miners that have a lower hash rate. So what you do is you report back to the pool with your miner on a regular basis what your best find is, how close you got to finding a valid block. Now, you could luck out with a low power miner and find a number very close to the target value, but you won't be able to do that again and again and again. Statistics kicks in, and on average each 10 seconds you'll get to within a certain distance but no closer. Occasionally you will get very close, occasionally be further out, but on average you'll be hovering around about, in a given period of time, getting this or that close to finding a valid block, and that will be proportional to the mining power that you have. So statistically over time the mining pool can determine what your probable hash rate is and then reward you accordingly. This kind of rewards you both for your hash power and your luck, but luck is a kind of thing in gambling, which is what this kind of is, that tends to even out over time towards the statistical average. And so that's how the mining pools determine how much power you're contributing and therefore what proportion of the reward you should get. So that was a very high level, not particularly mathematical or technically correct, but nevertheless giving a sense of what's going on in mining pools as to how they work out how to divvy up the share in an honest and fair manner. I hope you found this interesting, and in the next video I think I'll talk a bit more about the underlying mechanics of Bitcoin and why these miners are performing this computation over and over again. And I'll be trying once again to put a nail in the coffin of the phrase solving complex mathematical puzzles that is often used to describe mining, because they're not complex puzzles. They are mathematical, but they're not complex puzzles. Anyway, look out for that video coming soon. For now, I'll say goodbye.